2 months of people sit. I mean, my wife was sitting in a car for 4 days for a tank of petrol. But even they were funny places. People like sitting there playing cards, cracking jokes, and so on. So maybe this is part of the Sri Lankan sensibility. And it's either we laugh at each other or we kill each other. So better to laugh at each other and make jokes than to resort to violence. So I think this is something, even though Sri Lanka has been through a harrowing time.
Talk to us about Muthaiya Muralitharan. I mean, you've written a screenplay on his biopic. So,
I mean, okay, Murali was a great cricketer, but there was, even in his cricketing legacy, on one hand, he has taken 800 test wickets and he is, inarguably the greatest bowler of all time. But then there is a segment who also believes still that his action was illegal and his wickets were illegal and therefore he shouldn't be thought of as. So that was interesting to navigate that aspect. And the guy was, every time Sri Lanka gave him the ball, I mean, there was him and Chaminda Vas, right? We didn't have now we have a much more varied bowling attack, but then it was just you give Murali the ball and you expect him to take 5 wickets. If he doesn't take 5 wickets, it's a failure. So that's pressure. But while he's taking his wickets all around the world, there is this, he had to go and get his action checked and so on. So I was interested in what the toll on the man, because on the pitch he's always smiling but surely that must have taken a toll, having to prove yourself every time you bowl and having the crowd say no ball. So that was one aspect. Screenplays are just as difficult as novels. And probably a lot more heartbreaking, because a novel you finish it, even if you have to write it 10 times, it's your name on the cover and you're done. Screenplay, you finish it and then director changes, producer changes, actor changes, who knows how it will turn out, it's out of your control. But I mean, Pulp Fiction, I remember reading, we read Agatha Christie, James Hadley Chase, those books that I think all the region we read, but also we had a lot of similar books about, some of them were a bit sketchy, but about bank robbers and crime novels and all that. And I've always been attracted to that, and I don't think, there is this perception that literary works are highbrow and genre works are lowbrow, but I think a well-written thriller is a thing of beauty and is as difficult to craft as a beautiful literary novel. So I've always had that respect for it. But I think the humor and the satire is, maybe it's my sensibility, but it's certainly a Sri Lankan way of looking at things. If you look at the last year, if you look at the Aragalaya, it was fought on the street but also on social media. And the jokes, even in the grimmest time, the political cartoons, about mocking our leaders openly and making fun of it, this is something spectacular that perhaps would not have happened 10 years ago. Recently, a few days ago, we had Full Moon Poya, and one of the ruling family members said, "May the triple gem bless all Sri Lankans on this day." And then you look at the comments, someone says, "I'm surprised your family hasn't stolen the triple gem by now." And this is like, you'd be scared for that person. And the comments are brave and they're hilarious, and maybe this is our coping mechanism. We either we laugh at each other or we kill each other. So better to laugh at each other and make jokes than to resort to violence. So I think this is something, even though Sri Lanka has been through a harrowing time, the last decade, the last 3-4 decades, it's not a grim place, it's not a depressing place. Anyone who's been there, anyone who's lived there knows it's a cheerful, for whatever reason. Maybe we need to get a bit more serious and a bit more, but we seem to be able to crack a joke. Even those petrol queues, we had 2 months of people sit. My wife was sitting in a car for 4 days for a tank of petrol. But even they were funny places. People like sitting there playing cards, cracking jokes, and so on. So maybe this is part of the Sri Lankan sensibility, and it's something that I'm also attracted to. Because if I wrote a straight story about 1989, if you go to 1989, you research, the real story is much more gruesome than anything in the book. But I think the absurdity, and there's always absurdity in Sri Lanka, I think the absurdity and the humor help us get through it. So again, it's not something you contrive and you do later, but it's just how the book tends to flow, and I think that's the way. There's always plenty of absurdity to draw on living in Sri Lanka, so I don't think I'll be short of material.
Yeah, I think that's why Kerala loves you, because we also love our absurdities. We are famous for trolling ourselves. We troll all our masters, all our underlings. So this is a whole comic
script going on social media and our media all the time. So, two last questions. One is about your children's literature, and the next is about your the novel that is coming up. I think.
Yeah, here are my children's books, those sneaky plants, about what plants do when humans go to sleep. They have a very rich life. This is, I believe, my masterpiece, Where Shall I Poop? It's a potty training book for kids. I did this because, again, I think children's books are, I mean, I had 2 children while I was writing this, and yeah, perhaps why it took 7 years to write also, but I would read to my children every night, and then I'll try and write these novels. And I think me and my brother felt, there's a book called The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which I'm sure most parents have heard of, which sells 1 million copies every year. It was written in '67. So my brother and myself, we sat there reading this book thinking, forget trying to write literary books for 10 years which no one reads. Let's do a hungry caterpillar, sell 1 million copies, and then we're sorted. So we've set up this business, and every year we're writing 2, and also I've got 2 very book-loving but also impossible children. So that's my focus group. So yeah, at the moment I'm doing a book. I did one about plants. I'm doing a book about insects. I'm quite fascinated by insects. I believe they rule the planet and they'll be here when we are gone. And so I'm writing about insects. I'm writing about sleep. I like having multiple projects. If I just have one thing to do, I never do it. I watch YouTube or waste my time. If I have like 5 things to do, I might do 2 of them. So the children's book is one sort of diversion. It's a business opportunity. The new novel, yes, I started it earlier this year, and then I've been sort of distracted by Aragalayas and Booker Prizes. So hopefully I can do some writing tomorrow. But I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's bad luck to talk about a book that hasn't been written. But it will be about Sri Lanka. It will be about absurdity. There won't be any cricket or any ghosts in it or any dead bodies. It'll be a much more.
No more dead bodies.
Not for now, yeah.